The end of 2024 is near, and a lot of events were dropped in it. 6 events this year to be exact. And with all this activity, you have to wonder, how good are these events? Today, I will be ranking all 18 events in Tower Defense Simulator based on how fun the event game mode is. So no skins or towers, I don't care about that. We'll be going in chronological order, with the Sword Fight on the Heights event being first. I watched a video on it and played the first few waves of it in a recreation. It was basically 13 minutes of slow and stale TDS gameplay. This is simply a mediocre event. 5 out of 10. It's boring, but not offensive. It has its moments when it has fun wave structure and enemy design. The next event is the ROBLOX sponsored Area 51 event, which is, in essence, a slightly better version of last event. The main highlight is the Raider boss, which can kill and freeze towers, which is pretty cool. These enemy designs are also pretty funny and creative. I'll give it a strong 5. The next event is the Halloween 2019 event. I love this event. I don't remember the specifics, but I remember having a lot of fun back in 2019. The map is good for the time, and the enemy designs are too, but the gameplay is still slow, like all of the old events. In the video I'm looking at, this dude literally says, "I am falling asleep while playing." So yeah. Late game in this event is a little more fast paced and enjoyable, with the quick clowns, vampires, and swamp things being thrown at you. The boss is also really cool, but it took like 7 minutes alone in this dude's video, which is definitely a bit long. Probably a high 6 on this one. The Christmas 2019 event has a special place in my heart. It starts off well with these Frozens, which are relatively quick, giving a fitting first impression for the event. On wave 5, these gingerbread guys come out, who literally explode when they're killed. There's also these burnt gingerbreads which pelt fireballs at your towers, which I can imagine getting pretty annoying. There's more stuff, like the deep freeze, frozen tank, and yeti bosses, and these pop-up breads who spawn cursed little spider presents. Wave 14 has a 40,000 HP Frost hero leading up to the Krampus himself next wave. But I just have to say, not once has there been a moment of boredom in this entire event. Even the map pathing itself is awesome, because the enemies spawn into this giant loop, enticing you to place near the entrance, basically speedrunning. And the map is also really long, which is cool, because you can micro towers. And now on to the Krampus boss, where you have to do just that. At 200,000 HP, Krampus regenerates 100k, and this boss was surprisingly hard for TDS standards, considering almost everybody has to micro the towers to the back, except for apparently this group of people who literally didn't micro a single tower in one somehow. Just to add a cherry on top of this event, the lobby was amazing too. Probably an 8 out of 10. Amazing event. Time for the Spring 2020 event. The map itself isn't revolutionary, but it's good, and the enemy design is pleasant to the eye. The event itself has 2 modes, easy mode and hard mode. In easy mode you have a set loadout, and in hard mode you can bring your own towers. Sounds familiar. Both modes are pretty fun, the enemies are interesting, and the event's not too slow or fast paced. The boss is pretty fun to fight against due to the limited amount of money you have. You're gathering your defenses while attacking him at the same time. 7 out of 10. The next event is the Lord Sinister Halloween 2020 event. It feels really weird to say that right after Xmas 2019 and Egg Hunt 2019, because it feels like I played this event just a few months ago. This is sort of a turning point where the quality goes up a huge amount in the overhaul era. This era has stuff like Frost Invasion and Solar Eclipse. The Halloween 2020 event itself somewhat regressed into the really slow enemies of 2019, but it's not as bad. The worst part is that people used a military base for early game, which I can only assume must have been extremely boring. This event also had hardcore's price inflation, which I guess was cool. There's not much to say about this event. It's just a pretty fun normal event. I like how strapped for cash you are in the event, because you have to strategize on what to place, even when the boss arrives. I like this event. Strong 7 out of 10. Also, side note, I remember everybody complaining about how easy the Halloween 2020 event was, when it wasn't even that easy. Like, I can't even find a video of somebody soloing it, and people were mad in 2020. I don't know why people were mad. The next event is the legendary Frost Invasion event. This event can get a little slow paced in the early mid game when you leak something, but at least you can skip. The mid game waves where it starts spamming stuff like packed ice, snow golems, and frost invaders are really fun, because they combine single target and crowd control DPS. Also, are unstable ice annoying or fun? I don't even know at this point. The second hardest part of this event were the Frost Invader and Frost Ravager spam from waves 15 to 19, which also might be the most fun part of it. Obviously, the hardest part is the boss itself, being the first enemy to have 1 million HP. Honestly, I think Frost Invasion a little overrated. In my opinion, I'll give it a strong 7. The Metaverse Champion event exists. 3 out of 10. Actually, 3.5 out of 10, because this guy screamed, The Solar Eclipse event is the grandest endeavor TDS has ever took. 4 fully fleshed out game modes with raw, fun gameplay and amazing music and maps. We start off at night 1 with the usual gameplay, similar to events like Halloween 2020 and Xmas 19. The Jax boss is interesting due to being a major boss in the early game, and night 2 has possibly the greatest TDS OST of all time, along with an interesting map path and more classic gameplay with fun enemy designs and cool gimmicks. I love night 2. It's the essence of an amazing event. Simple, fun gameplay. Night 3 is also the essence of an amazing event, but it's a bit slower than the last 2 nights. It's like a more advanced version of Night 2, also having flying enemies. Night 4, the final night, is the grand finale, but with 3 paths just to make it wide, I guess. Early game is unfortunately very slow once again. There's a mob of 70 HP enemies on wave 1, forcing you to get a crowd control tower like Pyro or Mortar. In this video, these guys are still on wave 4 after 4 entire minutes, and you can't skip, so there's definitely a little boredom going on in there. Wave 10 is a really fun wave. The Jax returns with 10,000 HP and you must defeat him again. There's a little more enemy spam after that, which is pretty fun actually. Wave 15 spawns the Solar and Lunar Servants, which are bosses that spawn little enemies. In this video, they weren't killing them fast enough, so 2 of each enemy were actually on screen on wave 16, the final wave. The Umbra dialogue was cool, but I gotta admit, it was a little weird at times. Like, here it just says,
"It is time,"
then leaves, which feels empty. On wave 16, 1 of each servant, a whole bunch of random enemies, and the Umbra herself spawn. She has 1 million HP, and you have to use this battery charged cannon to shoot her whenever she tries to damage your base with a bow and arrow, stunning her. The boss fight is pretty well executed, and so is the whole event. I'd say Night 1 is a low 7, Night 2 is a high 8, Night 3 is a 7, and Night 4 is also a high 8, mostly just because of how boring early game is. Averaging it out, this event would be a low 8, but the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, so I'd give it a low 9, barely scratching by. After Solar Eclipse, I feel like the developers were seemingly getting bored of the game and tried to add as many gimmicks as possible. First adding 2 Defend the Center events, then doing stuff like map changes, weird hand bosses, bosses jumping across the map, and much more. There aren't many examples of a fun, simple event like Night 2 Solar Eclipse or Xmas 2019. The Duck Hunt is the first ever use of the Defend the Center game mode in TDS. And it's not that bad for DTC standards. I only played the event 1 single time. I literally don't even have Beach Commander, but people say that Duck Hunt is a fun event. The gimmick with the buyable crop farm spots to increase your economy from this middle part is pretty creative fun, and the wave structure is decent enough. That infinite wave was pretty cool though. I'll give it a strong 6. The Christmas 2022 event is the worst event in TDS history. 2 out of 10. Lunar Overture 2023 is an extremely polarizing event, because you have the amazing Solar Eclipse inspired Act 1 and Act 2 with special cutscenes, and then Act 3. Act 3 is the worst event mode in TDS history. It's a negative 1 out of 10 in the unnerfed state, and a 3 out of 10 in the easy nerfed state. Act 1 is basically Night 1 Solar Eclipse, but better. That's the best way to describe it. It has amazing maps, plural, because the map changes midway through the game, which is especially awesome right here because the lore behind this event is that the narrator is an insane puppet master guy and these maps are sets for the plays, which you can see over here in these shading arrangements. There's also cutscenes, which are extremely high quality, but they did break on launch, which was a little funny. The gameplay itself is, as I said earlier, just night 1 but better. There's more enemy and gameplay variety, especially in Wave 7 to 9 with the Swamp Things, which have 500 HP, requiring you to get something like Accelerator or Golden Scout. And then the map changes on Wave 10, and you have to replace all your towers as fast as possible, which is awesome to have such a fast-paced and fun gimmick in here. Waves 10 to 15 aren't all that interesting, it's just enemy spam, but the Wave 16 Executioner plush could easily be compared to the Headless Jacks from Solar Eclipse. Act 2 was, admittedly, flawed in several ways. I'll talk about that later. The first 6 waves are normal early game enemies, and Wave 7 has witches, which is really interesting because that's a flying enemy so early in the game, basically forcing you to plan ahead. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Then another cutscene, then the map changes, and here come 2 major flaws of Act 2. First off, it gets extremely slow paced if you're using something like a long range tower like range or accelerator due to how slow the enemies are, and these Frankensteins take like 10 seconds to despawn for no reason, which is annoying. The first few waves after 10 are pretty fun because you have to kill enemy spam with a few bosses at the same time, but it starts getting repetitive soon after that, with it basically being more and more enemy spam until wave 20. The boss itself is impossible to die to. It's a 500,000 HP hunk of meat that moves at literally 1 mile per hour. You can literally kill it with pre-buff commando, the one that does 50 DPS. And then Act 3. On release, Act 3 was a barely functional, nigh impossible defend the center mess of a game mode that was literally RNG. The most skilled TDS players in history lost first victor to some random iPad kids, which should give you a reference to how awful this game mode was. Over time, the devs nerfed the mode into an easy snooze fest. Act 1 was, I'd say, an 8 out of 10. Act 2 was a 7 out of 10, and Act 3 was a 3 out of 10 in the end. Act 3 is really dragging it down a lot, but in the end, you can just enjoy the first 2 acts and not play the third, which is why I'm going to give this event an 8 out of 10. It has a special place in my heart, and I think it deserves some flowers. On the other hand, I think Christmas 2023 Krampus Revenge was a little overrated. I don't know, I feel like I was trying too hard to be Frost Invasion. I found it a little fun, I speedrun it a bit, but in the end, it wasn't that good. The most fun part was using Mortar after Wave 10 and just spawn killing everything. Wave 18 and Wave 19 are literally 5 full minutes of filler. Not even like filler that might be a little fun, it's just filler that gets spawn killed instantly. Obviously, the purpose of the filler waves is to give you money, but why not just give you a fat wave bonus? High 6 because I can't bring myself to put it in the same tier as Frost Invasion and Halloween 2020. The Hunt event was the first Roblox sponsored event since 2019, not counting the 2021 Metaverse Champions. And honestly, this event was insanely fun. I don't even know why. The event doesn't even do anything special. I just love this event. I speedran this event for probably like 10 hours and did solo 1 tower slot. I'm giving this event a high 7 because honestly it was more fun to play than Frost Invasion. But that's just coming from a speedrunner tryhard. The classic event was basically just 5 worse The Hunts. It had 5 different maps, which basically just spammed enemies that already exist in the game, and you had preset loadouts. It's designed for level 0 players as it was another Roblox sponsored event, but it was actually very fun to speedrun, just like The Hunt. I speedrun all 5 maps, getting a total time of 28:27. I'll give this event a high 7 too, because yeah, it was fun. Those last 2 events were ranked really highly, simply because I thought they were very fun to speedrun. They were mostly just rushed for the Roblox events, and they had no cutscenes or voice acting or anything, which does make me feel a little off ranking them so high. Okay, so I kind of forgot to add the Skibidi event until after I made the entire script because it's not listed in the wiki page for some reason. This event was honestly really fun, just like the classic and the Hunt events. I'll give it a, drumroll, 7, just like the last 2. Insane rankings. The HexScape event could be considered the start of a new era, the postmodern era of TDS events, where everything is super high quality with cutscenes and voice acting and deep lore, and then the gameplay is, less thought through. This event has 3 nights, like Lunar Overture and Solar Eclipse. I really don't like the lore of this event. and all the events after it. It feels like the TDS devs just made stuff up 3 years ago and are now trying to piece the parts back together. Especially with the Please Donate event that I'll talk about later.
Really
it feels like Hasm just dropped a money bag at Paradox HQ and now he's part of the lore. That's not a factor theory, just my unhinged rambling. Night 1 is much like the previous Night 1s, a bunch of low HP early mid-game enemies. Night 2 is a little more in depth. Well, it's still enemy spam, but there's like the more of it. And there's also a computer that you have to fix for some reason. I'm making this sound really bad. It's not that bad. Night 1 and Night 2 are like 7 out of 10. They're pretty good. Night 3 is boring. It's annoying, and the boss is yet again a weird gimmick. Even while speedrunning Night 3 with friends, it was still extremely annoying. Night 3 is like a 5 out of 10. The whole event itself is a very light 7. I want you to take this in. This event has insanely high quality graphics, crazy cutscenes, voice acting, 3 maps, and it got ranked lower than The Hunt, which was one rushed map. I don't know if this is a reflection of myself being a speedrunner, the game not caring about gameplay. Whatever. Dislike the video if you want. The Please Donate event was mediocre. 6 out of 10. And finally, oh my god, the last event. I've been typing this script for like 3 hours, and I've probably been editing this for 30. The Frost Invasion 2024 was, in a way, nostalgia bait. I don't know how to follow into that. If you haven't noticed yet, I'm only ranking these based off the event map and gameplay itself, so I don't really care if they added 3 new towers or 20 new skins, which is why Frost Invasion 2024 is so bad. The gameplay is more sloppy gimmicks and enemy spam. It's bearable for the first and maybe second playthrough, but after that, it's lost all of its replayability. The game invested all of its resources into 2 towers, 5 new charms, 5 new emotes, like 7 new stickers, and 5 new consumables, which is actually insane. Like, they worked so hard on that, but that left no room for the gameplay of the event. The gimmick where you have to move all your towers to the back also feels half-baked, because it's heavily implied in the dialogue that the siege engines were supposed to move far later than they actually did. And why did the Frostbeard have to jump around the map like a Just like and subscribe already. This event's getting a strong 6. Just remember that I'm a bitter tryhard ranking this event off of gameplay experience. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed the event. Thank you for watching.